show. It's called Easy ACES. Jane tries to get a loan for her brother. Easy ACES was one of those kind of funny shows, ran for a long time on radio. And what you need to be listening for especially are Jane's malapropisms, if you know what that is. Just kind of keep an ear open, okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, Easy ACES.
Well, first I want to say that the leading characters in this story are not fictitious. Very often, I wish to heaven we were, especially Jane's brother, Paul. Although Paul is allergic to work and is the laziest guy I know, I must admit he is obnoxious. Paul never shows it, but I know he hates me.
I never show it, but I hate him.
He can't stand the sight of me.
I can't stand the sight of him.
Behind my back, he calls me names.
Communist.
12 years ago, Paul was in a little automobile accident. He's been collecting $10 a month on an insurance policy. If he ever goes to work, they'll stop paying him that big annuity. So he can't work. Paul was lucky enough to have escaped alive, and now he wants to be paid for it. Robbing St. Peter to pay Paul. The one I really feel sorry for is Paul's wife, Arlene. They've been married 10 years and have always been destitute.
I've been married 10 years, and I've always been destitute.
She never has any new clothes.
I never have any new clothes.
She's too old to go to work.
I never have any new clothes.
How do they live? Well, you've heard of people who live by their wits. Paul lives by his wits. Of course, if that's living, it's only half. The other half, Jane takes care of. Jane and I are the typical average married couple living in the typical little eastern town, New York City. Population 7 million, give or take one. And if you're going to take one, take my brother-in-law. Or for that matter, take Jane. When Jane makes up her mind to do something for Paul, she does it.
When I make up her mind to do something for Paul, I do it.
She's completely uninhibited.
I'm completely uninhabited.
And her arguments are unequivocally irrefutable.
Yes, they are.
I should have suspected something the day we got married 15 years ago. The day Paul asked if he could come along on our honeymoon. And I said no. And Jane said,
Let him come along, dear. He's never been on a honeymoon.
And I should have suspected the other night after dinner when Jane and I were sitting around the living room and she gave me her guess who routine. It went something like this.
Well, dear, guess who called me up today?
Rochelle Hudson?
No.
I give up.
My brother Paul.
Oh, how much did he want this time?
Oh, he's fine. Arlene's fine, too. Do you know that next week they will have been married 10 years? My, how time flies. It seems like only a year ago they were married 9 years. Well, when he told me 10 years, you could have knocked me down with a fender. I said, Paul, you mean to say you've been married to... Now, just a minute. What did you mean by how much money did he want? Who said anything about money?
Oh, then he didn't want any money.
Who said he didn't?
Well, which is it?
$200.
Jane, I'm not going to give it to him. Why doesn't the guy go out and work?
Oh, now, dear, you know there are many reasons.
I'd like to hear them.
Well, the third reason is because he always...
Wait a minute. What happened to win in place?
Beg pardon?
What are the first two reasons?
First, because he was sick last year. You know, he was just about to get a job when he got the international flu.
I knew you'd finally come up with the right word.
And besides, like Paul says, what's the dollar worth today? Practically nothing.
Oh, so he's not going back to work until the dollar gets back to what it should be worth.
Yes, 50 cents, 57 cents.
Of course.
Well, we talked it over, and Paul decided to come to your office tomorrow morning, I told him.
Jane, I haven't got $200 to throw away.
Are you insinuating that my brother isn't going to pay you back?
Oh, no, of course not. He's as good as gone? Gold. As usual, as in any argument with Jane about her brother, I ran second and paid $2.80 to place. Because the next morning, when I got to my office, oh, I'd tell you this, I work in the advertising business, make a nice living, minus withholding and Social Security. It's a pretty fair job. Of course, Jane always exaggerates my importance by telling everybody I'm a big cog in the machinery.
He's a big clog in the machinery.
The only thing I can't stand about the job is my secretary, Miss Anderson. Why don't I get rid of her? She's a cousin of Jane's, twice removed. That is, I removed her twice, but Jane got her back 3 times. With score now 3-2 in her favor, Miss Anderson practically runs the office her way.
I practically run the office my way.
Oh, she's a doll. D-U-L-L. So I got to my outer office about 9:30 the next morning, and I asked Miss Anderson if there had been any calls.
Yes, Joe Davis called.
Joe Davis? Who is he? What did he want?
He wanted a date for Saturday night. I told him I was going to the movie Saturday night with Bill Wilson, so I gave him Wednesday night. We're going dancing. Joe's an awfully good dancer, much better than Bill.
Miss Anderson, were there any sideline calls? I mean for me, the advertising business?
Let me see. There was somebody. Who was it now?
Isn't that awful? If the thought comes to you, Miss Anderson, you'll be in touch with me. I'll just go into my office and wait.
Oh, sure. I'll let you know if it comes to me.
Well, there you are. Is that a nice thing to do? Keep your brother-in-law waiting in your office to see you?
Miss Anderson, is this the,
Yes, that's it. Your brother-in-law is waiting in your office to see you.
Miss Anderson, take a letter
A letter?
to China and don't hurry back.
Well, brother, how's the world treating you?
Not very often.
I haven't seen you in some time. How long has it been?
About $25 ago. Paul, would you mind taking your overcoat off my desk?
Oh, sure. Excuse me. Recognize the overcoat?
Yes, I recognize it.
You gave it to me 2 winters ago, remember? Lucky we're the same size.
I was born lucky. Look, Paul, Jane tells me you want me to give you $200. Is that right?
Not give, lend. What's your language?
Sue me. The answer is no.
Oh, now, wait a minute, brother. It isn't for myself I want the 200. It's for Arlene. We have a 10th wedding anniversary next Wednesday, and I want to get her something she needs pretty bad.
For $200?
Yeah.
Like what?
I'm getting her a tonsillectomy.
You're going to have your wife's tonsils removed as an anniversary present.
Why not? It's something practical.
Something she wouldn't buy for herself.
Yeah, that's it. How about it? Let me have the 200.
No.
Well, could you make it 100?
Gonna have just one tonsil out?
Yeah. No, I could pay 100 down.
And get the rest from me later. Nothing going. I can't afford it. It's not the principle. It is the money.
Yeah, but I'm going to pay you back. I keep track of every cent that you...
I'm sorry, Paul. And look, kid, if you come to my office and sit around with your feet scratching up my desk, I wish you wouldn't be wearing my shoes. With my no ringing in his ears and my overcoat hanging on his back, Paul walked quickly from my office to my home in my shoes to see my wife. Before we look in on this tender little scene, I ought to tell you that, like the typical average family, we live next door to a radio announcer. Fellow named Ken Roberts. Ken is the only celebrity Jane knows, and every time he comes to the house, which is about once a day, Jane gets his autograph. Ken loves it. So before Paul got to the house, Ken was visiting with Jane.
Hey, Jane, that's an attractive dress you're wearing today.
You do? Thanks, and may I return the compliment and say it's one of my favorites, too. Where have you been, Ken? Long face, no see.
Jane, are you home?
Oh, it's my brother. Yes, Paul, here we are in here. Hello, Paul.
Sis, I was just over talking to that husband of yours.
Just fine. Oh, you remember Ken Roberts, don't you, Paul?
Ah, sure, I can. Well, Janie, he turned me down. My own brother-in-law wouldn't lend me $200. I've got to have that money, Jane, and you've got to help me.
Paul, you know I'd give you my bottom shirt, but I haven't got $200.
What kind of a town is this? Isn't there any place a fella can borrow $200?
Well, this may be an idea. One of my commercials I do is, "Friends, do you need money? Come to the Confidential Loan Company. You can borrow up to $300 on one signature alone. Every transaction is treated most confidentially. Well, why don't you go down there and borrow the money?"
The Confidential Loan Company? Yes, I never thought of that. How about it, sis? Will you sign my note for me?
Oh, sure, Paul. I'll go down to the loan company with you. I'll be ready in a jitney.
So Jane and her brother Paul decided to go to the Confidential Loan Company to borrow $200. All this I didn't know. But as the crime was reconstructed for me later, Jane and her brother arrived at the loan company, and Jane, as usual, took charge.
How do you do? I'm Mrs. Ace.
How do you do, and what may I do for you?
We'd like to see some of that money you advertised to lend. What is your name?
See some?
How do you do, Mr. Seesum?
How do you do?
This is my brother, Paul Sherwood. This is Mr. Seesum, Paul.
How do you do, Mr. Seasum?
No, I'm Mr. Wilkerson.
You said Seesum.
No, you said see some.
No, Mr. Seesum. I said, what is your name?
My name is Wilkerson.
How do you do? I'm still Mrs. Ace.
How do you do?
And this is my brother, Paul Sherwood, still.
How do you do, Mr. Still? Now, madam, did you say you want to borrow some money?
Please, Mr. Seesum, not so loud. It says confidential. Are you the confidence man I have to see?
I'm Mr. Wilkerson, in charge of loans. Have chairs, please.
Thank you. Sit down, Paul.
Is this your first loan with our company, Mrs. Ace?
Yes, it is. Why? Your advertisement doesn't say experience necessary.
No, I mean, have you an established credit here? What is your full name, please?
Jane Ace. Mrs. Jane Ace.
Mrs. Jane Ace.
How do you do?
How do you do? I'm Mr. Wilkerson.
Yes, we've met. And this is my brother, Paul Sherwood.
How do you do, Mr. Seesum? I've met your brother, and my name isn't Seesum. It's Wilkerson. Now, how much money do you want to borrow, Mrs. Ace?
Please, Mr. Wilkerson, if you're going to keep talking that loud, I'd rather see Mr. Seesum.
There is no Mr. Seesum. I lend the money. Now, how much do you want?
$212.75.
$212.75. That's a rather odd amount, isn't it?
Well, the 200 is for me. I'm getting my wife a tonsillectomy for an anniversary gift.
Yes, and on the way down, I saw a sale on hats for $12.75. So I thought we might as well kill two birds with one loan, you see. Well, Mr. Wilkerson?
Just a minute. You, sir, you're getting your wife a tonsillectomy as an anniversary gift?
That's right. I'm not working right now, and this money will come in pretty handy.
And I'm going to sign the note for him.
I see. He isn't working. And you? And what is your business, Mrs. Ace?
Sister to the defendant.
What's that?
I'm his sister, but I haven't got any money to lend him.
Then what good is your signature on a note?
What good? Well, I don't know who would sign for a person if his own sister wouldn't. And if I'm wrong, I'm not far from it.
You're what?
Doesn't it to you?
Wait a minute. Let me see what happened. I was sitting here in my office, quietly reading Dick Tracy, when she came in and said she wanted to borrow $212.75, and she wants to sign the note, and she has no security. Do you have any charge accounts in any of the stores, Mrs. Ace?
Oh, sure. But I wouldn't want them to know about borrowing this money.
Just a minute. I'll call upstairs and check on your credit.
Yes, Miss Martin speaking. Over.
Miss Martin, this is Wilkerson. I have a Mrs. Jane Ace here who wants to borrow $212.75. Will you check her credit for me?
Mrs. Jane Ace wants to borrow $212.75. Over.
Fine, confidential.
That's right, Mrs. Martin. $212.75.
That's a rather odd amount, isn't it?
Well, $200 is for a tonsillectomy her brother is giving her wife for a wedding anniversary.
Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Sounded like you said he's giving her a tonsillectomy for a wedding anniversary. Over.
That's right, Mrs. Martin. And the other $12.75 is for a hat she saw in a clearance sale on the way down here. Check it, will you, Miss Martin?
Will do.
Roger.
Mr. Wilkerson, was that coast to coast?
What? Oh, that's our efficient credit system. It'll take just a minute. And while we're waiting, we can look over this application. Here are the weekly rates. For a loan of $212.75, you'll have to pay back $4.40 a week for 1 year.
$4.40 a week? That's reasonable.
There's Mrs. Martin. There's Miss Martin again.
This must be the repeat broadcast for the West Coast.
Yes, Miss Martin?
Mrs. Ace is NG. All charge accounts are in her husband's name. He's okay. Over.
Roger. Thanks, Miss Martin. Sorry, Miss Ace, you're NG.
What's that mean? Not guilty?
Yes. No. It means your signature is not acceptable. But if your husband will sign the note, we'll make the loan. Take the application and have him sign it.
Well, okay, I guess we'll have to do it, Paul.
But he'll never sign that note, Janie.
Just leave it to your Uncle Dulcie. We'll see you later, Mr. Seesum.
As Jane and Paul sailed out of the confidential loan company, they waved a fond farewell to Mr. Wilkerson, sinking slowly in the west. If you were a betting man, wouldn't you give 100 to 1 I wouldn't sign that note? Well, save your money. A few minutes before Jane and her brother got to my office, I had a visit from my boss. That would be Mr. J.K. Norris of Dutton, Sutton, Mutton, and Norris. I don't know how he got in there. Mr. Norris talks like a copybook. He believes a man's best friend is his motto.
Don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today.
He's been married 3 times.
If at first you don't succeed, try again.
But in spite of his corny talk, I like J.K. He's a lonely man, has no children.
If at first you don't succeed...
Yes, as I was saying. Just before Jane and Paul got to my office, Mr. Norris had come rushing in, quite pleased with an advertising idea I had thought up for a new account we were going to handle.
Mr. Ace, my congratulations on that advertising campaign for our new account, the Confidential Loan Company.
Well, thank you, Mr. Norris.
I knew when you and Thompson got together, you'd turn out a great campaign. 2 heads are better than 1, I always say.
But I did this one myself, Mr. Norris.
Yourself. Good work, Mr. Ace. Too many cooks spoil the broth, I always say.
Yes, you do.
By the way, the confidential loan people are very concerned about the type of man we're assigning to their account. They want to be sure you've never signed a note over there on a loan or borrowed money.
Oh, no, I never did.
Good. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. I always say, we had one man who borrowed money from them, speculated in the stock market. You're not speculating, are you? I heard a rumor you are.
It's not true.
That's good. A fool and his money are soon parted, I always say.
Hello, dear.
Oh, hello, Jane. I always say.
Hello, Mr. Norris.
You're just in time, Mrs. Ace.
Just fine. This is my brother, Paul, Mr. Norris.
How do you do?
Glad to meet you, Mr. Norris.
Mrs. Ace, I was just congratulating your husband on a fine job he did on one of our accounts.
Oh, it was nothing, really, Mr. Norris.
Nothing, he says. Don't let his modesty fool you, Mrs. Ace.
All right.
I hope you're as proud of him as I am.
Oh, you are?
Congratulations again, Mr. Ace. This campaign will make you famous in advertising circles. How about it, Mrs. Ace? Your husband's a celebrity.
Oh, now, please.
A celebrity? Dear, I'm so proud of you. It's like having a movie star in the family.
Movie star? I suppose you'll be asking me for my autograph.
Autograph? Yes, that's an idea. Give me your autograph, dear.
Oh, now that's carrying a joke too.
Oh, but dear, you're a celebrity.
I know, but I...
Go ahead, Mr. Ace. Give your wife your autograph.
But Mr. Norris, it's embarrassing.
Here you are, dear, on this piece of paper right here. Here's your pen.
I feel kind of idiotic. What is this paper I'm gonna...
Go ahead, sign your name.
Well, all right. Here you are. This is kind of silly. Autograph to my own wife.
That's it. Thanks, dear. Give me that.
Nice work, sis.
What is that paper you gave me to...
Well, Mrs. Ace, let's clear out and leave the big man to his own thoughts. Confidentially, I think he wants to be alone.
Yes, that's exactly where I'm going. Come on, Paul. See you later, dear.
All I can say in defense of my simpering self is that I have a good alibi. I'm stupid. And I never would have known I even signed that thing if something hadn't happened a week later. Jane and I were sitting around the living room after dinner, and I was doing a little bragging. Jane, remember that advertising campaign Mr. Norris congratulated me on about a week ago? He gave me a $500 bonus today. Pretty good, huh?
Yes, dear.
Is that the most enthusiasm you can work up? I thought at least you'd cheer.
Yippee, dear.
Well, thanks, if you can spare that. Maybe this'll brighten you up. I'm going to take 200 of this bonus and lend it to Paul. Arlene does have to have her tonsils out, and as long as I have...
Paul got that money already.
Where?
Last week. But I'll tell you what you can do.
I said, where did Paul get that money?
If you want to do somebody a favor, how about increasing my allowance?
Where did Paul get the increase your allowance? How much?
$4.40 a week.
$4.40. How'd you arrive at that round figure?
Well, I might as well get this off my chin.
Okay, start chinning.
I'll make it short and sappy. Remember last week when I came to your office and you were a celebrity and you signed your autograph on a piece of paper I gave you?
Fine, celebrity. Yes.
Well, That day you opened a charge account at the Confidential Loan Company.
The confidential. Oh, no.
Paul borrowed $200 when you autographed the note.
No.
Oh, yes. And today they called up that Paul missed the first payment, $4.40.
And he's going to miss every other payment. And I'm going to have to make it good.
I should say you won't. What kind of a wife do you think I am? I got you into this, and I'm going to make it good myself. I'll pay it out of my allowance. All you have to do is raise my allowance $4.40 a week.
Look, Janie, I don't even mind the money now. But when the confidential loan company finds out I signed that note, they'll cancel their advertising account.
Oh, no, they won't, dear. When he saw your signature, he asked me if you're in the advertising business, and I said yes. And he laughed, and he said he wants to have somebody like you handling their advertising.
Laughed? Glad?
He said he only wished all the other signers they have would be as happy to sign a note as you were.
Who told him I was happy?
He could tell by the way you signed it. He said this was the first time in his experience that a co-signer ever signed a note. Sincerely yours with all my love.
Isn't that awful?
Tune in again Wednesday for another visit with the Easy Aces. And now for tonight's cast for Easy Aces. Goodman Ace was played by none other than George Suki. Paul, Jane's brother, was played by Herb Thompson. Arlene, Paul's wife, was played by Kathy Juarez. Jane Ace was played by Ellie Babka. Miss Anderson, Ace's secretary, is played by Sue Gajinski. Mr. Wilkerson, also known as Mr. Seesum, was played by Tom Duggan. Miss Martin was played by Nell Brennan. Mr. J.K. Norris was Andre Dixon. I was your announcer, John Byhun. And then our wonderful sound effects and everything else over there is played by Marty McNulty.